Hello, and a huge welcome to the channel. If you're looking for cross-dressing stories that are emotional, intriguing, and truly empowering, you've come to the right place. I'm not a boy, Tyler. I'm a girl. I whispered the words, my voice trembling so hard I thought it might shatter into a million pieces. His hands were still wrapped around my waist, a warm, solid presence against the thin silk of my dress. Right there in the blinding fluorescent light outside the dark movie theater, the entire world seemed to hold its breath in that single terrifying second. Subtitle: The first time he looked at me like a girl. For 3 years, I had lived a life split in two. There was Alex, the quiet, lanky boy who slouched through the school hallways in oversized hoodies, invisible and unremarkable. And then there was Aubrey, the person I became the moment I closed my bedroom door. Aubrey was the real me. My transformation was a sacred ritual. It started with a long, hot shower, shaving every inch of my body until my skin was smooth and alien to my own touch. Then came the makeup, a careful, practiced art of concealing the shadow of a beard that wasn't yet there and highlighting cheekbones I was only just discovering. The most crucial part was the corset. I'd pull the laces tight, gasping as it cinched my waist down to a delicate 24 in, creating an hourglass figure that felt both foreign and fundamentally right. Finally, I'd slip on the soft, natural-feeling silicone breast forms, securing them in a delicate lace bra before choosing my outfit. Today, it was a silky wine-red bodycon dress that hugged every curve I had painstakingly created. My wig, a cascade of rich chestnut waves, fell softly over my shoulders. A pair of 9-inch heels elevated me, making me stand tall, almost eye to eye with the boys at school. When I looked in the mirror, Alex was gone. Only Aubrey remained. And only as Aubrey, walking out of my house and into the world, could I finally truly breathe. The local mall was my sanctuary and my proving ground. It was a place where I could be just another girl browsing the racks, lost in a sea of anonymous shoppers. I was in the dressing room of a department store, admiring the way a new dress clung to my hips when a voice from behind made my blood run cold.
Aubrey.
My heart didn't just stop. It plummeted into the pit of my stomach. I spun around, my ankle wobbling precariously on the stiletto heel. Standing there with his mouth slightly agape and his ice-blue eyes wide with disbelief was Tyler. Tyler, the most popular senior in our school, the captain of the basketball team, the boy everyone called the Ice Prince because of his cool, untouchable demeanor. I stumbled, a wave of dizziness washing over me in an instant. He closed the distance between us, his hand shooting out to steady my elbow. His touch was gentle, automatic, the kind of casual chivalry he would offer any girl. "Oh my God," he breathed out, his eyes traveling from the top of my wig down to my heels and back up to my face. "You're beautiful." It was the first time in my life a boy had ever looked at me like that, not with confusion or mockery, but with genuine, unadulterated admiration. My mind was a screaming vortex of terror and exhilaration. He thought I was a girl, a real girl. He saw me, Aubrey, and he thought I was beautiful. A blush I didn't have to fake bloomed across my cheeks. "Thank you," I managed to stammer, my voice an octave higher than Alex's ever was. He didn't let go of my arm. "I have seen you around before, haven't I?" "I'm Tyler Aubrey," I squeaked, my heart hammering against the confines of my corset. We talked for a few minutes, the conversation a blur of pleasantries that felt like a high-wire act without a net. He asked if I went to our high school, and I mumbled something non-committal about being new in town. A lie that tasted like ash on my tongue. He bought it completely. To him, I was just a stunning new girl he'd been lucky enough to run into. The thought was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. He walked with me through the mall. His presence, a warm protective shield. I felt a sense of validation, so profound it almost brought me to tears. This was what it felt like. This was what it was supposed to feel like. For a few blissful hours, I wasn't a boy in a dress. I was just Aubrey, a girl being charmed by a handsome boy. The fantasy shattered the moment I pulled into my driveway. I was still fully dressed, the dress, the fishnet stockings, the vibrant red lipstick. I had been so lost in the haze of my encounter with Tyler that I had completely lost track of time. As the garage door rumbled open, my headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the figure standing there, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. It was my mom. Subtitle: "You want to be my daughter at least half the time." I expected shouting. I braced myself for tears, for anger, for the crushing disappointment I had been dreading for years. But my mom did none of those things. She just stood there silently as I switched off the engine, her gaze sweeping over me, taking in every detail from the chestnut wig to the 9 inches heels. After a long, heavy moment, she let out a slow, weary sigh. "Get in the house, honey." That one word, honey, broke me. The dam of fear and adrenaline I'd been holding back all evening burst. I stumbled out of the car and into the house. And by the time we reached the kitchen, I was sobbing uncontrollably.
Great.
Heaving gasps that racked my corseted frame. She didn't say anything at first. She just pulled me into a hug, her arms wrapping around me as I cried into her shoulder, smearing my carefully applied mascara and foundation onto her blouse. Her hands stroked my hair, my fake hair, in a soothing rhythm that was so familiar, so motherly. It only made me cry harder. That night, the whole story came tumbling out. I told her everything about the first time I'd secretly tried on my older cousin's dress when I was 11 and felt a shocking sense of rightness, about the years of secretly saving my allowance to buy cheap clothes and a lumpy, unconvincing pair of breast forms from a sketchy website. I told her about the name Aubrey and how it felt more like my own than Alex ever had. I explained the feeling of looking in the mirror and finally seeing the person who was supposed to be there, the person I was on the inside. When I was finished, my voice and my face a blotchy mess. She held me at arm's length, her eyes searching mine. "All this time," she said softly, her voice thick with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "All this time you've been carrying this alone." She pulled me into another hug. This one tighter. "Okay," she whispered into my hair. "Okay, if you need to be a girl, then I'm going to teach you how to be a girl properly." The week that followed was the most surreal and wonderful of my entire life. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The secrets and shadows were gone, replaced by a strange and brilliant new reality. On Monday, she took me to a specialty boutique downtown, the kind of place that caters to post-mastectomy patients and crossdressers. My heart pounded with a mixture of shame and excitement as we walked in. But the woman behind the counter was kind and professional. With my mom's help, I was fitted for a professional-grade set of silicone breast forms. They weighed 700 g each, perfectly mimicking the weight and feel of real tissue. They were so soft they jiggled slightly with every breath I took. When I put them on under a real properly fitted bra for the first time, I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger I recognized completely. I started to cry again, but this time they were tears of pure joy. My mom paid for them without flinching, along with a small fortune in new lingerie. Beautiful, delicate things in silk and lace that made me feel cherished and feminine from the inside out. The rest of the week was a crash course in womanhood. She taught me how to walk with my hips, not just my legs. We practiced in the living room, me stumbling in my heels while she offered gentle corrections. She showed me how to sit with my legs crossed elegantly, how to smile with my eyes, how to carry a purse without looking like I was holding a football. We went through my secret wardrobe together. She gently discarded the cheap, ill-fitting items and helped me pick out a new collection of clothes that were sized for my body, not some idealized fantasy. We bought flowing skirts, soft knit sweaters, figure-flattering jeans, and cute crop tops. My closet, once a place of hiding, was becoming a place of expression. The biggest test came on Sunday. "Get dressed," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We're going to church." Panic seized me. As is Aubrey. "That's the only daughter I have with me today," she replied with a small smile. I was trembling so violently I could barely do my makeup. Walking through the mall was one thing. Walking into our community church, where everyone had known me as Alex my entire life, was another. I wore a conservative but pretty floral sundress, modest heels, and kept my makeup subtle. As we walked up the steps, I gripped my mom's hand so tightly my knuckles were white. A few people smiled politely. Mrs. Henderson from down the street approached us. "Good morning, Claire," she said to my mom, then smiled at me as "Your niece has grown into such a lovely young woman, I almost didn't recognize her." My mom squeezed my hand. "They grow up so fast, don't they?" she said, her voice perfectly level. I felt a giddy, light heat rush. It worked. No one suspected a thing. They just saw a girl with her mom for the first time out in the open in the full light of day. I felt completely and utterly real. Subtitle: The glue that would keep me a girl for 60 days. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text message that made my newly real world spin on its axis. It was from Tyler. "Tyler. Hey, it's Tyler from the mall. I know this is random, but I can't stop thinking about you. Would you want to go see a movie with me on Friday?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my mind racing. This was insane. This was a fantasy. Alex, the invisible boy, would never get a text like this. But Aubrey, the beautiful girl from the mall, did before my fear could talk me out of it. I typed back a simple, breathless reply. "Aubrey, I'd love that." Friday night felt like a dream. I spent hours getting ready. My mom helping me choose the perfect outfit, a soft cashmere sweater that clung to my new curves, and a dark denim skirt that showed off my long legs. She even helped me perfect a smoky eye, her steady hands, a calming influence on my jittery nerves. When Tyler picked me up, he looked even more handsome than I remembered. He handed me a single red rose, his eyes drinking me in with that same look of admiration from the mall. "Wow, Aubrey," he said, his voice a low murmur. "You look incredible." In the darkened theater, he reached for my hand, his fingers laced through mine, his thumb stroking the back of my hand gently throughout the entire 2-hour film. I don't remember a single thing that happened on screen. My entire universe was focused on the warmth of his hand, the subtle scent of his cologne, and the terrifying, exhilarating reality that I was on a date with Tyler as a girl. When the credits rolled and the lights came up, he turned to me, his blue eyes soft and serious. "I had a really great time tonight." "Me too," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I couldn't. His lips met mine in a kiss that was gentle, warm, and utterly perfect. It was my first kiss, my first real kiss, and it was everything I had ever imagined it would be. In that moment, he believed I was a girl. And because he believed it, I believed it, too. I melted into him, a puddle of pure, unadulterated bliss. The drive home was a silent, happy blur. But when I got back to my room and closed the door, the euphoria began to curdle into a frantic, desperate thought. I want this forever. I didn't want to take off the makeup, the clothes, the body. I didn't want to wake up as Alex tomorrow. I wanted to be Aubrey always. The thought of taking off my breast forms, of seeing that flat boyish chest in the mirror again, felt like a physical blow. And that's when I did something incredibly, monumentally stupid. Months ago, I had ordered a tube of medical-grade adhesive online. It was the kind professional cosplayers and drag queens used to secure prosthetics for long conventions. It came with a stark warning printed in bold red letters on the side. Warning creates a semi-permanent bond. Do not apply directly to skin unless you intend for the prosthetic to remain in place for up to 60 days. Early removal can cause severe skin damage. At the time, I'd been too scared to even open it. But now, high on the thrill of my first kiss and terrified of losing the feeling, it seemed like the only logical solution. With trembling hands, I unscrewed the cap. I carefully applied the clear, potent-smelling glue to the back of each silicone form, then pressed them firmly against my chest. The cold shock of the adhesive was followed by a strange, tingling warmth as it began to set. I held them in place for 5 minutes, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. When I let go, they stayed.
They were a part of me.
I stood in front of the full-length mirror, my hands tracing the permanent new curve of my chest through my sweater. They moved with me, felt connected to me in a way they never had before. A wild, manic smile spread across my face. I was Aubrey now for the next 2 months. There was no going back. The next morning, The reality of my impulsive decision came crashing down. I had forgotten to lock my bedroom door. My mom walked in with a basket of clean laundry just as I was getting out of the shower, a towel wrapped around my waist. She froze in the doorway, her eyes widening as she stared at my bare chest. My very, very female-looking bare chest. Her face went pale. "Alex, what did you do?" she whispered, her voice filled with a dawning horror. I couldn't meet her eyes. They're stuck.
Mom.
She stepped closer, her hand hovering over my chest as if she was afraid to touch it. "What do you mean?"
Stuck.
I explained about the glue, the 60-day warning. The color drained completely from her face. She sank onto the edge of my bed, her head in her hands. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice muffled. "Do you have any idea what this means? You can't wear your boys' clothes anymore. You can't bind this down. How are you going to go to school on Monday?" Subtitle: Either you continue pretending to be a boy and live in pain, or you go to school as who you are. The weekend was a blur of quiet panic. We tried everything: oil, alcohol, special removers, but the medical adhesive was unyielding. My skin grew red and raw from the attempts, but the forms remained fused to my chest. The reality was stark and unavoidable for the next 2 months. I had breasts, real-looking cup breasts. There was no hiding them. Sunday evening, my mom sat me down at the kitchen table. Her expression was grave, but her eyes were full of a fierce, protective love. She laid out the options, her voice soft but firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "You have 2 choices. Honey," she said, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "Option 1. We try to hide this. You wear the baggiest hoodies you own. You slouch. You spend every second of every day at school terrified someone will notice. You live in physical and emotional agony, pretending to be a boy when your body is screaming that you're not. Or there's option 2. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "You go to school tomorrow as Aubrey. You walk in there with your head held high, and you show them exactly who you are." My breath caught in my throat. "I can't," I whispered, the words tasting like fear. "They'll destroy me." "Maybe," she conceded. "Or maybe you'll finally be free." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Tomorrow is Monday. The choice is yours." That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my room, dressed in a silk nightgown, my mind a war zone of possibilities. I was staring out my window, watching the rain streak down the glass, when a soft tapping sound came from outside. I peered closer and saw a figure huddled under the small overhang of our porch roof. It was Maddie. Maddie had been my next-door neighbor and best friend since we were 5. We'd grown apart in high school as I retreated into my shell, and she blossomed into a popular, confident girl, but the bond of our shared childhood had never fully broken. I'd seen her looking at me through my window a few times when I was dressed as Aubrey, but we'd never spoken of it. I crept downstairs and opened the back door. She slipped inside, her clothes damp from the rain. She didn't look shocked or disgusted. Her eyes, wide and compassionate, were fixed on my chest, clearly visible under the thin fabric of my nightgown. "Oh my God," she whispered, but not in a bad way. It was a whisper of awe. "It's true. You're beautiful." She took a step closer. "I saw your mom earlier. You're in trouble, aren't you?" I broke down and told her everything about Tyler. The kiss, the glue, the ultimatum. She listened patiently. And when I was done, she didn't offer pity. She offered a solution. "Okay," she said, her expression determined. "You're not doing this alone. Let me help you." The next morning, just as the sun was rising, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Maddie was standing there, a huge makeup bag in her hand, and next to her, looking sleepy but resolute, was her twin brother, Logan. My heart did a painful flip. Logan. I'd had a secret, hopeless crush on him since the 9th grade. He was quiet, artistic, and kind, the complete opposite of Tyler's loud, jockish charisma. He played guitar in a band and always had a sketchbook in his hands. He was also, in my opinion, the most beautiful boy I had ever seen. He stared at me, his gaze lingering for a moment on my face, my hair, my chest. I clutched my silk robe tighter, convinced he was about to laugh or run away. Instead, a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "Wow," he said softly. "Maddie wasn't kidding. You look really good." He met my eyes and there was no judgment in them, only a surprising warmth. "So, are we doing this? You going to school? We'll go with you." I didn't know it then, but Logan had spent half the night on the phone. He had sent a mass text to half the varsity basketball team, the very kings of a school that I was so afraid of. The message was simple. "My friend is in trouble and needs our help tomorrow. We're showing solidarity. We're all wearing skirts." When our school bus pulled up to the curb, I took a deep breath. Maddie had done my makeup, a natural look that made my eyes pop. I was wearing a simple, elegant teal midi skirt, a soft cream-colored sweater that didn't hide my new figure, but didn't flaunt it either. And my long chestnut hair was styled in soft waves. Logan and Maddie flanked me like bodyguards. As I stepped off the bus, a hush fell over the crowd of students milling outside. For 3 long, agonizing seconds, everyone just stared. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, and my entire body went rigid with fear. I was sure this was it, the moment my life would end. Then someone started to clap. It was one of the basketball players, a giant of a boy named Kevin, who was, to my utter astonishment, wearing a plaid pleated skirt over his jeans. Then another player started cheering and another. Within seconds, the silence was shattered by an eruption of whistles, cheers, and applause. It wasn't mocking, it was supportive. Across the lawn, I saw at least a dozen of the most popular, intimidating boys in school, all wearing skirts of various shapes and sizes. Logan grinned and nudged me forward. "See," he murmured, his voice close to my ear. "No one's going to mess with Aubrey." I walked into school that day not as a freak, but as a girl. And for the first time, I felt like I might actually survive. Subtitle: I like you both. When you're Aubrey, and when you weren't brave enough to be. The school day passed in a surreal haze. Teachers, likely briefed by the principal, didn't bat an eye when they called out Alex on the attendance, and I answered. Students mostly kept their distance, whispering and staring, but the blatant support from the jocks acted as a powerful deterrent against any open hostility. The one person who couldn't seem to look at me was Tyler. I saw him in the hallway between classes, and his eyes met mine for a fleeting second before darting away. A look of profound confusion and betrayal on his face. He didn't understand. He had kissed Aubrey, the mysterious new girl. He couldn't reconcile her with Alex, the quiet boy from his English class. He started avoiding me, and while it stung, a deeper part of me understood. He was attracted to the illusion, not the person. Logan was the opposite. He seemed to be everywhere I was. He sat with Maddie and me at lunch, talking about his band and asking about my day, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. He walked me to my classes, a silent, steady presence at my side that spoke volumes. He didn't treat me like a curiosity. He treated me like me. After school, as I was walking toward the bus stop, a sudden downpour started. I didn't have an umbrella and was about to make a run for it when a large black umbrella suddenly appeared over my head. I turned to find Logan standing beside me, his shoulder brushing against mine. "Didn't want your hair to get ruined," he said with a small, shy smile. We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, the sound of the rain drumming on the umbrella all around us. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "For today, for everything." He shrugged, but his eyes were intense. "It was nothing. I couldn't stand the thought of anyone giving you a hard time." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Look, Aubrey or Alex, I don't care what you call yourself. I've liked you since 9th grade. You idiot." My head snapped up to look at him. "What?" "It's true," he said, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "I just never knew how to say anything. You were always hiding inside that giant hoodie, so quiet and closed off. I didn't think I had a chance." He gestured vaguely at me. This is the first time I've seen the real you, the one who isn't afraid. And you're even more amazing than I thought." My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. The world seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us under the umbrella, surrounded by the rhythm of the rain. He leaned in, his movements slow and deliberate, just like in the movie theater, but this time was different. This wasn't a fantasy. This was real. He wasn't kissing a girl he just met. He was kissing the person he'd known for years. His lips were soft and hesitant at first, then grew more confident as I responded. It was a kiss that tasted like rain and truth under my sweater. The cold, wet fabric clung to my skin, and I was acutely aware of the silicone forms pressed against my chest, a constant reminder of my strange in-between state. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. They were just a part of the journey, a bridge from who I was to who I was becoming. And Logan was kissing me anyway.
He was kissing all of me.
From that day on, something shifted permanently. I wasn't Alex pretending to be Aubrey anymore. I was just Aubrey at school, at home, everywhere. And I wasn't alone. Subtitle: the first time I had breasts of my own, and the first time I cried from happiness. The 60 days of my self-imposed sentence passed with agonizing slowness and breathtaking speed. Living as Aubrey full-time was a revelation. It was exhausting and terrifying, but it was also liberating in a way I could never have imagined. Logan and I became inseparable. Our relationship a quiet, steady anchor in the storm of my transition. He held my hand in the hallways. He helped me with my homework. And he never once made me feel like I was anything less than the girl I knew myself to be. The day the adhesive finally began to lose its grip was a momentous one. With my mom's help, I was able to gently peel the silicone forms away from my skin. Looking at my flat, boyish chest in the mirror felt strange, like looking at an old photograph of someone I used to know. The forms had been a crutch, a beautiful, necessary lie. But now I was ready for the truth. On my 17th birthday, my mom gave me a card. Inside, there was no money, just an appointment confirmation with an endocrinologist at the city's gender identity clinic. Her support had been my bedrock, the foundation upon which I had built this new life. The doctor was kind and understanding. We talked for hours about my journey, my feelings, my hopes for the future. After a series of physical and psychological evaluations, he deemed me a suitable candidate for hormone replacement therapy. The day I picked up my first prescription felt more significant than any birthday or holiday. That night, I sat on my bed holding the tiny white estrogen pill in the palm of my hand. It looked so small, so insignificant, but it held the promise of everything I had ever wanted. I took off my shirt and lay down, my hand resting on my flat chest for the last time. I felt the familiar ache of emptiness. "Welcome home," I whispered to the future me. Then I swallowed the pill with a glass of water. The changes were subtle at first, then startlingly rapid. My skin grew softer. The sharp angles of my face began to soften into gentle curves. My emotions were closer to the surface, more intense and vibrant. And then one morning, about 3 months in, I woke up with a dull ache in my chest. When I pressed down, I felt them small, hard lumps under my nipples, my breast buds. They were real. They were mine. I lay in bed and cried for an hour. Tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. A year later, at our high school graduation, the world was a different place. I was a different person. I wore a simple white dress that skimmed my new figure, my own breasts. A natural and perfect 34B, filled out the bodice without any help from silicone. Hormones and time had worked their magic, shrinking my waist and rounding my hips. My hair, my own hair, had grown out to my shoulders, styled in soft waves that framed a face that was finally recognizably mine. As I stood waiting to receive my diploma, a pair of strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind. Logan rested his chin on my shoulder. His voice a warm whisper in my ear as the photographer's flashbulbs went off around us. "You are the most beautiful person here tonight, Aubrey." I turned in his arms and smiled. My heart so full it felt like it might burst. Tears welled in my eyes. But for once, they weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a joy so profound it was almost painful. "I'm finally me," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He leaned down and kissed me. A sweet, lingering kiss that promised a future. I was no longer afraid to claim. I knew my journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more changes, more moments of doubt. But standing there in Logan's arms with my diploma in my hand and a life of possibilities stretched out before me, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. Of course, here is the continuation of the story, filling in the pivotal year of Aubrey's transformation that leads to her graduation. Subtitle: Learning the 1,000 Tiny Steps of Becoming. The year between my 17th birthday and graduation wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a quiet, steady alchemy. It was the process of my body slowly, painstakingly catching up to my soul. It all began with a tiny white pill and a small mint green one. Every morning I'd sit on the edge of my bed, the pills in my palm. The estrogen was my future, the spironolactone, my past's erasure. Taking them was a ritual, a silent prayer. I'd swallow them down, and for a few minutes just sit there trying to feel the magic working inside me. At first, there was nothing. It was an act of pure faith. Then about 3 months in, the first real sign appeared. I woke up to a dull, persistent ache in my chest. It wasn't a bad pain. It felt more like a deep muscular soreness, the kind you get after a good workout. When I cautiously pressed on my pecs, I felt them two small, hard, and exquisitely tender lumps directly beneath my nipples, my breast buds. I gasped. A sound that was half pain and half pure, unadulterated ecstasy. They were real. They were mine. It wasn't silicone. It wasn't glue. It wasn't padding. It was me. My body was finally listening. I spent the entire morning in a daze repeatedly pressing on my chest just to feel the tender ache. A beautiful secret. Pain that confirmed my becoming. With this internal change came a new dedication to my external self. Shaving, which had once been a chore done in secret, became a near-daily ritual of self-care. I'd lock the bathroom door, fill the tub with hot steaming water, and lather my legs with vanilla-scented shaving cream. The glide of a fresh razor over my skin, leaving behind a trail of impossible smoothness, was deeply satisfying. I'd marvel at my own legs, pale and slender, looking more like a girl's every day. The best part was slipping into bed at night, the cool, clean sheets gliding over my hairless skin. It was a sensory affirmation, a feeling of rightness that seeped into my very bones. My mom, my steadfast guide in this uncharted territory, took me shopping for my first real bra. Not the flimsy bralettes I'd worn to hold my forms, but a proper underwire t-shirt bra. The woman in the lingerie department was professional and kind, wrapping a measuring tape around my burgeoning chest with a practiced air. "You're a 34A, sweetie," she announced with a smile. A cup? It was the smallest size they made, but it was the most beautiful letter in the alphabet to me. In the dressing room, my mom helped me hook the clasp, the underwire pressed against my ribs, the cups enclosing my tender, growing breasts in a gentle, supportive hug. I put my sweater back on and stared at myself in the mirror. The shape was subtle, but it was there, a smooth, natural, feminine curve. "How does it feel?" my mom asked, her eyes soft. "It feels real," I whispered, unable to look away from my own reflection. She taught me other things, too. The importance of a good skincare routine, how to choose a foundation that matched my newly softened skin tone, the art of applying a subtle perfume, a light floral scent that became my signature to my pulse points. These were the 1,000 tiny steps of womanhood that no one ever talks about. The little rituals that, woven together, create a tapestry of identity. I was learning the language of being a girl, not just in my heart, but with my entire body. Logan was my rock through it all. He was endlessly patient with my mood swings, a notorious side effect of the hormonal shift. One afternoon I'd be giddy with happiness, the next I'd burst into tears watching a sad commercial. He never made me feel crazy. He'd just wrap his arms around me and hold me until the wave passed. "It's just the estrogen," I'd mumble into his shirt, embarrassed. "I know," he'd say, kissing the top of my head.
It's okay.
"I'm right here." He was fascinated and endlessly supportive of the changes. He was the first person I told about my breast buds. And his reaction was a quiet, genuine smile. "That's amazing, Aubrey," he'd said, his sincerity a balm to my anxious soul. He didn't see me as a project or a curiosity. He saw me, the real me, emerging day by day, and he loved what he saw. Subtitle: First times in a life I was meant to live. That summer was a season of firsts. The weather turned hot and humid, and the whole world seemed to be migrating to the community pool. Maddie invited Logan and me to go with her group of friends. And my first reaction was a jolt of pure cold terror. The pool meant swimsuits. It meant there was nowhere to hide. I can't. I told Logan later that day, my voice trembling. Everyone will see. My body had changed, but it wasn't a cisgender girl's body. My shoulders were still a little broad. My hips not as wide as I'd like. And down there was the undeniable proof of the body I was born into. The thought of exposing all of that vulnerability was paralyzing. So what if they see Logan, said gently, taking my hand? They'll see you. Aubrey, my amazing girlfriend, who is going to look incredible in a bikini. His confidence was infectious, but it was my mom who gave me the final push. We went shopping for my first swimsuit. I'd expected to be relegated to frumpy one-pieces, but she steered me toward the bikinis. We found a cute one with a skirted bottom that offered a bit more coverage, and a top with light padding that would enhance my still small chest. Standing in the dressing room, wearing nothing but the two small pieces of fabric, was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. I saw every flaw, every trace of the boy I used to be. "Look at me," my mom said, forcing me to meet her eyes in the mirror. "You are a beautiful young woman. Do not let fear steal your joy. You deserve to swim. You deserve to feel the sun on your skin." The day we went to the pool, my stomach was a knot of anxiety. I wore a sundress over my bikini, my hands clutching a towel like a life raft. But when we got there and saw our friends laughing and splashing in the water, something shifted. I wanted to be in there with them. I wanted that joy. I took a deep breath, dropped my dress and towel on a lounge chair, and walked toward the edge of the pool. It was the longest walk of my life. I could feel eyes on me, but I kept my gaze fixed on Logan, who was waiting for me in a shallow end, his expression full of love and encouragement. The cold shock of the water was a blessing, a sudden, all-encompassing sensation that washed away my self-consciousness. I submerged myself completely, and when I came up for air, Logan was right in front of me. "See," he said, his hands finding my waist under the water. "You're fine." "I'm freezing." I laughed, the sound shaky but real. He pulled me closer, and we spent the rest of the afternoon in the water. I splashed with Maddie. I got into a water gun fight. I floated on my back and felt the sun on my face. And for the first time, I felt like just another girl at the pool on a hot summer day. It was simple. It was normal. It was everything. Another stranger first happened a few weeks later. I woke up with a familiar dull ache. But this time, it wasn't in my chest. It was a low, cramping pain in my abdomen radiating through my lower back. I felt bloated, irritable, and emotionally raw. I complained to my mom that I thought I was getting sick. She looked at me, a knowing, empathetic expression on her face. "You're not sick, honey," she said softly. She went to the medicine cabinet and came back with a heating pad and some Midol. "Your body is running on estrogen now. Some trans women get cyclical symptoms just like a period. It looks like you're one of them." The idea was so bizarre yet so affirming. She plugged in the heating pad and wrapped it around my middle, then made me a cup of chamomile tea. I lay on the couch curled up in a ball, feeling miserable and crampy. And my mom sat with me stroking my hair. She wasn't comforting a boy with weird hormone side effects. She was comforting her daughter, who had period pains. In that moment of shared, traditionally female misery, I had never felt more like her daughter. As summer bled into fall, and my senior year began, my confidence grew. Logan and I went on real dates to nice restaurants where I wore pretty dresses, and he'd hold the door open for me. I learned to accept compliments without blushing and stammering. I was no longer an impersonation. I was Aubrey through and through. One evening, we ran into Tyler at a coffee shop. It was the first time I'd been face-to-face with him since that disastrous day at school. He was with a new girlfriend, and for a second we all froze. The old me would have wanted the floor to swallow me whole, but I just stood there holding Logan's hand. Tyler looked at me, really looked at me, and a flicker of something regret maybe, or just surprise crossed his face. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, a recognition that the girl he'd met in the mall and the girl standing before him were, in fact, the same person. I nodded back, and we walked away. I didn't need his approval anymore. I had my own subtitle. The reflection in the mirror was finally a friend. Senior year was nothing like the years that had preceded it. I was no longer invisible Alex hiding in the back of the class. I was Aubrey, a girl with friends, a loving boyfriend, and a growing sense of self-assurance. I joined the yearbook committee, my artistic eye finding a home in layout and photography. I went to football games, huddled under a blanket with Logan, cheering until my voice was hoarse. Prom was the culmination of everything. Logan, looking impossibly handsome in a classic tuxedo, pinned a cor of white orchids on my wrist. I wore a floor-length gown of deep sapphire blue that shimmered under the lights. It fit me perfectly, accentuating the waist. I still cinched with a more comfortable corset and flowing over the gentle curve of my hips. As we slow danced, his arms wrapped around me and my head resting on his chest. I felt a profound sense of peace. This was a night I never thought I'd have. I had dreamed of it, of course, but always as a painful fantasy, a life that belonged to someone else. But here I was living it. You okay? Logan whispered, his lips against my hair. More than okay, I whispered back. I'm happy. A week before graduation, I had a quiet moment to myself. It was late, the house was silent, and I found myself standing in front of my full-length mirror. Just as I had done on that terrifying night, I glued my breast forms to my chest. So much had changed since then. I slipped out of my pajamas, standing naked in the soft glow of my bedside lamp. I looked at the stranger in the mirror, but she wasn't a stranger anymore. She was my friend. My hair, my own hair now fell to my shoulders in soft chestnut waves. My face was softer, my jawline less defined, my cheeks fuller. My eyes, I thought, looked brighter, no longer clouded by secrecy and fear.
My gaze drifted down to my chest.
My breasts were not large, but they were perfectly shaped. And more importantly, they were entirely mine. I cupped them in my hands. The weight and warmth are constant. Comforting miracle. My waist tapered in, and my hips had a gentle, definite curve that hadn't been there a year ago. The body was still a work in progress, a canvas that the hormones were still painting on. But for the first time, I didn't see the flaws. I didn't see the ghost of the boy I was forced to be. I saw potential. I saw strength. I saw Aubrey. Tears welled in my eyes. The familiar tears of overwhelming emotion that had become my constant companions on this journey. But these were tears of gratitude. I thought of my mom's unwavering love, of Maddie's instant acceptance, of Logan's profound and steady devotion. I thought of the courage it had taken to step off that bus, and the kindness of the boys in skirts who had guarded that first fragile step. I had been so focused on becoming a girl that I hadn't realized I was already her. I just needed to let her out. Subtitle: My real life was just starting. The graduation ceremony was a blur of smiling faces, flashing cameras, and the rustle of hundreds of polyester gowns. I walked across the stage when they called my name. The school had, with my mom's fierce advocacy, agreed to use Aubrey on my diploma. The applause from my friends was a roar in my ears. I felt a sense of accomplishment so deep it resonated in my bones. I hadn't just survived high school, I had been born in it. After the ceremony, out on the sun-drenched lawn, my family and friends enveloped me in a flurry of hugs and congratulations. My mom held my face in her hands, her eyes glistening with pride. I am so proud of you, my beautiful daughter, she said. And that was all it took for me to start crying all over again. Amidst the joyful chaos, Logan found me. He pulled me away from the crowd toward a quiet spot under an old oak tree. He was holding my diploma, his fingers tracing my name embossed in gold foil. He handed it to me, then wrapped his strong arms around my waist from behind, pulling me back against his chest as my family's camera flashed again and again. He rested his chin on my shoulder, His voice, a warm whisper meant only for me. "You are the most beautiful person here tonight, Aubrey." I turned in his arms to face him, my heart feeling too big for my chest. A supernova of joy and love and relief. I looked at his kind face, the boy who had seen me when I couldn't even see myself. And I knew I was the luckiest girl in the world. "I'm finally me," I whispered, the words both an ending and a beginning. He leaned down and kissed me, a sweet, lingering kiss full of promises for a future that was no longer a distant dream, but a tangible reality waiting for us just beyond the horizon. It was a future where I would go to college as Aubrey, make new friends as Aubrey, fall deeper in love as Aubrey, and live every single day as the woman I was always meant to be. My life as a boy was over. My journey of becoming was complete. My real life, my true life was just starting.